I thought I'd talk about education today, and not just my favorite subject, STEM education, although that is very important, and definitely not Common Core because that debate has reached a cacophony of pro versus con in recent weeks as states are rushing to implement the Common Core standards in their curricula. Now, I think both of those subjects, while they're important, they also miss something even more important at a more fundamental level. I think we've all asked, why is the United States failing to teach our kids at a level of excellence that enables them to compete effectively on the global market? Why is the American educational system generally ranked somewhere in the middle of the pack of industrialized nations? But I think that question also doesn't really hit the mark when it comes to reaching at the root of the problem, or at least what I think is one of the roots. I believe a more fundamental question that we need to ask before getting into policy issues is we need to ask, how do people learn, particularly young people? Some will say that the primary way we learn is from our parents when we're young, or from our teachers in school since we spend the better part of our waking hours in class, or as we reach our teenage years, primarily from our peers. All of those answers have a bit of truth to them, but I don't think they're spot on. Because those answers assume that the learning process flows from and is directed by the teacher to the student. In reality, doesn't the question answer itself? You see, people don't learn because information is subjected upon them. People learn when the brain pulls in information and experience into its collective knowledge base and assimilates it with what it already knows. The brain does that on its own 24/7 every day of our lives. It does that at a feverish pace in kids. In reality, kids learn from themselves. You see, before adulthood, the human brain obviously isn't fully developed yet. But we're born with more neurons in our brain than we have in adulthood. When we're kids, the brain is developing, growing, and programming itself, forming the connections and pathways that it needs in order to function and survive. The effect of this is that the brain is constantly learning new things. It has a natural curiosity. It wants to learn and experience the environment around it. This is why kids are imaginative, creative, impulsive, and risk takers. In contemporary parlance, they are, in short, natural disruptors. That's actually an inefficient mechanism for causing the brain to form permanent neural pathways, known as learning, because by definition, it attempts to force the brain into doing something that it otherwise would not be doing at the time. It's not at all like the learning process that occurs when someone explores on their own out of curiosity because they want to. We may like to think that we impart learning on kids, that they learn from us, and that the information we feed them equates to education. Well, that may pass for what we call teaching, but it is not learning. Contemporary education operates on the belief that the way children learn is to have mass amounts of information, sometimes irrelevant, oftentimes uninteresting, thrown at them, and like spaghetti at a wall, some of it will stick. We then test the kids to see how much did stick, And if enough did, we say they're smart, that they've learned, we give them a good grade, and pass them along to the next level. Does that mean they've learned anything? We need to ask them, have they actually learned anything, or have they merely memorized information? For example, it's important to teach chemistry. But more than 90% of us will never utilize any of what we ostensibly learn in chemistry class. The system feeds data into students, hoping some of it will sink in, rather than stimulating the desire to learn chemistry, to play with it, to experiment with it, to accidentally set something on fire. Providing an opportunity for the student to explore the field and teach themselves out of their own curiosity, we throw a scripted curriculum at them, whether it's appropriate for the individual or not, and then give them a one-size-fits-all test that says if they know the atomic weight of selenium, that they've learned something. But have they? Or do most of them end up like me? I don't know selenium's atomic weight. I don't need to know it. I don't care to know it. And if I ever do get curious, I'll look it up myself. That is, I'll teach myself anyway, but only if and when I'm interested. So, there's a big part of the problem. The system, so to speak, is too arrogant to see that the learning process doesn't start with a teacher, parent, friends, or curricula. The learning process doesn't start with the system. The system, so to speak, believes that the problems with education can be solved by adding more of the system to the system that's failing in the first place. Hence, we get the argument, we just need more money. Well, more money in a failing system only breeds a bigger failure, I think. Part of the problem is that the education system is very instructor-centric. It's oriented toward how students are supposed to be taught rather than how they need to learn. Teachers should be guides and mentors, enablers of learning. From teachers, educators that I know and have talked to, that's what they want to be. That's why they got into the business in the first place. But all too often they get relegated to the role of mere instructors, feeding out a standard curriculum, many times on subjects they don't even know about, and calling it teaching. Rather than ask each other how we can teach better, we should start by asking kids how we can help them learn better, or at least get out of the way of them learning on their own, as their brains are already pre-programmed to do. As I said, kids are curious, and they're impulsive and risky. That's their nature. They naturally soak up the world around them, seek out new things they haven't experienced before, and test limits. Testing limits, by the way, is critical to learning and maturing and growing up as a well-adjusted, healthy individual. It's like testing a new spacecraft and stressing it out until it breaks. Engineers need to know the system's limits in order to design a better, more robust system. The human brain is doing the same thing while it's developing in kids. Of course, parents, teachers, authority figures create rules and artificial limits to rein in this natural wildness that kids possess. Schools do this as well. They do it good, they do it well, or not so well, depending on your perspective. Many times, rules originally meant to keep a sense of order so that learning can take place while keeping kids from getting hurt, have instead become tools to compel compliance and good manners in order to make the school day easier for the teacher, while ignoring the needs of the students. In short, rules and structures meant to maintain order and keep children safe also place arbitrary limits on curiosity, creativity, and the impulse to, quote, just try it. That impulse is a bedrock of science, art, invention, and exploration. It's too bad that adults all too often actively seek to kill that impulse in kids. Oh, sure, adults say they appreciate when a student thinks outside the box. But the fact is, that individual is only permitted to think just so far outside of an approved box before they get in trouble. To me, this is illogical. It really is when you think about it. Adults essentially beat the innate drive of the brain to learn on its own right out of children, and they do it all in the name of education. Unless it's in a textbook, a requirement for graduation, part of a standardized test, well, to a great extent, teachers, parents, and the system don't consider it learning, don't consider it worthy of teaching, and place little value on it. Or worse, they condescendingly refer to it as a, quote, hobby, as though hobbies have little to no value and are optional in life. That completely ignores the simple fact that somebody engaging in a hobby is engaging in learning. They're just doing it on their own because they want to. So kids pick up on that, especially once they reach teenage years and begin to get rebellious. They learn on their own, using us as an example, that they should cast their hopes and dreams and childlike wishes aside, quit imagining things, quit daydreaming, and stop being curious about things that we have decided are ridiculous and won't give them a grade on anyway. As far as we're concerned, what's important is for them to go to school, behave, and get good grades. And then they can get a good job and a good career and a good retirement plan and take care of themselves and their family. That's great. But what we're doing is teaching kids how to earn a living, but not how to live. So, back to my original question. I think that maybe we need to stop trying to subject kids to so much of our teaching and instead ask them how they need to learn. What can we do to help them learn more effectively? We need to understand the difference between learning and merely being taught. We need to change our perspective from being one that sees education as something we teach to students and rather as something students pull from us. How so? Well, kids already have the tools they need to learn. There's really only one tool required. It's the brain. In it, there are the qualities like curiosity that form the foundation of the learning process. What kids don't have is focus or direction. They're not supposed to at a young age. What we as adults can provide is a means to corral all that energy, focus it, and utilize it for the benefit of the student by empowering him or her to learn more effectively in ways that they are naturally doing anyway. But all we can do is help. We can be mentors, but if we try to be mere instructors, the whole process will break down and revert back to a system that attempts to impose education on an unwilling audience. See, kids don't need us to tell them how to learn. They already do it, naturally and constantly. We need to understand that. Use it to our and their advantage. Encourage them to unleash their willingness to just try it, to have fun, to play with it, and support the creative nature of the developing mind. In short, the first step to fixing the education system is to stop being so arrogant that we think we know everything about how to educate kids, and start by asking them, how they learn. Because, we may think we know how to teach kids, but only they really know how each one individually learns. Even if they don't realize it, they still know. We need to ask them.